Today, I'm going to show you in part 2 how to create this using GSAP 3.0. Awesome stuff. Hey everybody, what's up? Gary Simon here. So today is part 2 of the GSAP 3.0 video series. And in the first video, if you didn't watch it, it's not a big deal because I was only working within Adobe Experience Design or Adobe XD to design the layout and also prototype the type of animations that we want roughly. You don't have to watch it if you're just interested in GSAP only, but that's what this video tutorial is all about. So GSAP, for those of you who don't know, is the Greenstock animation platform. It's a very powerful JavaScript animation library that allows you to do really sweet animations that go beyond just your regular old CSS animations. It gives you a lot of power. So GSAP 3, there's a lot of new changes here. If you go to this page, you'll find them, 50 plus new features. It's roughly half the file size of the old one, but has even more features. So you can read all about this, check out the demos, which are awesome, and the CDN links and all that good stuff. So once again, just to show you what we're doing here, we're creating this with GSAP, and I'm even showing you how to use timeline to very easily reverse and reveal your animations, which is very cool. All right, so if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe and let's get started. Before we begin though, Linode, the sponsor of this video, makes it easy to host your site, your app, or service on whatever technology stack you use. With one-click apps like WordPress and Drupal, getting up and running is easy. With backend access to your server, customization options are all but limitless. A fully configurable DNS manager allows for you to easily switch your domain over to your new server, and SSL certificates can be installed for free using open source tools. So sign up using the link below to get $20 in credit on your new Linode account. All right, so here we are. Just one I just want to mention. I just recorded this entire tutorial. It was like 40 minutes long, and then I realized the power adapter wasn't plugged into my camera. I didn't realize until after recording, so I have to redo all this again. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit more than what I had because I am pressed for time. But I just want to show you in Adobe XD from part 1 of the tutorial, the prototype that we created. And this is kind of what we are going after, but we're going to make the animation even better with the help of GSAP. All right. So the part that I'm going to speed up is the HTML and CSS and getting that stuff out of the way because that takes up actually the bulk of the tutorial, the 40-minute tutorial that I had. So all I'm going to do is to show you, very briefly describe the HTML. This is all the HTML that we have from line 21 to 11, essentially. We have 10 lines just to recreate what we had going in the XD prototype right here. All right, so just to show you in the browser, if I could find that, here we go. This is what it looks like in the browser. One thing though, I did not make this responsive just because, I wanted less code. I didn't want to sit here, trying to describe a bunch of stuff that isn't pertinent to GSAP. So I'm assuming if you're interested in GSAP animations, you probably know about HTML and CSS already. Just know that there's no animation happening here right now, and that's what we're going to be doing. So to get started, we can go to, I'm not sure, my toolbar will not work for some reason when I have this maximized. Very frustrating. It usually never happens. But I just wanted to show you GSAP 3. There's a good getting started page. So it's right here. It's going to show you highlights. It's going to say, exactly what has changed. These are the key parts right here. There's demos about what you can do, and then also the CDN. So the GSAP core is what we want. We're going to copy that URL. We're going to come down here just on top of our closing body tag script. We want the source right here and just paste that in. All right. So after that, we're going to say script and go right there. So we're going to start very simple in terms of examples, and then we're going to work our way up after that. Just so that you can kind of see how we can progressively enhance our app by using different features. So what we want to do is, let's say for instance, we wanted just this element right here, this div class content, to just animate from opacity 0 and then down. Just move it down on the y-axis. Here's how we would do it with the new GSAP 3.0. So we'll say GSAP from, and the great thing is if you use GSAP in the past, like the 2.0 versions, then you would have to concern yourself with using tween light, tween max, timeline light, timeline max. It was all kind of confusing, but now everything's condensed into the single GSAP that we can use. So we can use the from or the to method, and I'll show you what that means. Just it's hard to explain. I'm just going to show you. And the first argument is going to be the selector. You know, what is it that we want to animate? Well, in our case, it's the content. What's interesting is we only have one div element in this entire layout, so we could actually put div instead. So you can use, you know, the actual HTML elements themselves as selectors or classes. So after that, what properties do we want to animate within this object? So we'll say opacity is going to be 0, duration is 1, and we'll say y -50. That's it. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So refresh, and there you go. It's going from opacity 0, -50 pixels, and coming down right here. So it's saying it's going from those values. What if we change this to? Basically, it's going to hide. It's going to reverse everything. It's going to go to opacity 0 and move up 50 pixels instead of down. Awesome, awesome stuff. So freaking easy. Now, one thing I do want to mention, if that's all the animation that you had on your site, or it's just some really simple animations like that, they're not complex sequenced animations, you wouldn't want to use GSAP. You can just use regular CSS animations for that. So next up, let's show easings. So what are easings? What we can do is we can add in another property called ease, and we can specify a lot of different types of easing. So let me show you the documentation because they have a great example here. So GSAP easings, we go here, and it's going to show you all the different easings. So this affects how you're going from point A to point B. So like elastic will make it bounce. Power 1, power 2, 3, 4. It kind of starts out fast and then goes real slow. You can do a bunch of different things right here. So just to show you a couple of those, we'll have like power 2 ease in out. Save that. And you'll notice the animation kind of comes in a little bit faster. And then to really show you how interesting this is, we can say elastic, and we'll say 1, 0.3. You can experiment with those values to see what they do. Look at that. Very, very cool stuff. I don't want elastic, but I just wanted to show you that you can add in easings to your animations. All right, after that, let's add in the animation for our little purple swirl graphic and also the building, the right column. All right, so we can just add in another GSAP from. We'll target the selector of image, which is the swirl graphic right here. All right, that's the selector. And we'll say duration is 1, y is 30, and opacity is 0. So notice they start at the same time, and they're just moving in opposite directions based on the values I gave them. Notice up here, y was -50, but here it's 30. So they're going in an opposite direction. We can go ahead and Shift-Alt down to replicate that line and change this to aside, which is this selector right here. The aside contains the building graphic in our SAS file. So the SAS, by the way, you can grab all this from the Codepen that I linked. This is right here. All right, so for aside, we're gonna have to change things up just a bit. So for duration, we have 1, opacity will be 0, and let's just do y30. But we're gonna change that, and I'll show you why. So if I refresh this, notice that there are scroll bars right here. That's because this aside is, the height is 100%, and if we move it down, it's gonna create scroll bars. Really, the way we had it before, we had it animating from the left to the right. It'll do the same thing if we do X and like 100. Notice we're getting scroll bars vertically and horizontally. We don't want that. So we can animate, if we must, the background position property instead of the X position. So background position in CSS looks like that. But if you have values that have hyphens, you want to put camel case, so position like this. Then we can specify 200 pixels and like 0 pixels. So we'll save that. And there we go. All right, awesome stuff. Now, these are all animating at the same time, and we can add delays to our properties. So to our image property, which is right here, let's add a delay of like 1.4, and we'll add a delay of like 1.1 right here. So that's 1.4 seconds and 1.1 seconds. So let's refresh this. So notice this comes in a little bit after this stuff did, which is kind of how almost we planned it in our XD template. All right. Now, the one thing that we didn't do is we didn't stagger these in. In our XD template, each one of these is coming in on its own independently. So how will we do that? Well, we're going to restructure this just a bit. And we're going to notice how we have a class of anim1 on the H1 element, the paragraph, and the button beneath it. So this is important because it's going to allow us to create a stagger animation. So we're going to change this top right here because this is what currently is animating them right now from the div element. We're going to change that to anim1. All right, and the only thing we're going to change is we're going to add a stagger property, and this is a numeric value, so 0.6 seconds. So let's save that. And now look how they automatically animate in sequentially, and they stagger animate. And that's all it takes. It will do that to every CSS element or HTML element that has that class applied to anim1. Very, very, very cool stuff. So they'll animate faster in if this is a lower value, or they'll animate in more slowly if this is a higher value. Awesome stuff. So now, the last thing I wanted to show you before we get to the timeline portion is the text reveal animation. Because if you recall, if we go back to our document, we hit play, we have a blinder effect or a text reveal, a vertical text reveal effect applying here or happening. So how would we do that? Well, if you know anything about CSS text reveal animations, I've done a video in the past, you can use the after selector on the element in order to make that work. So we could see here for our H1 element, we have a span element wrapping around each of the 3 lines of our text. The CSS over here for that looks like this. There's just a display block on that span element, and that's it. But right now, we have to create span after, and we have to give a few more properties here. So first, what content is empty, position is absolute, left will be 0, width will be 100%, height as well, and also z index will be 1, so it sits on top of the text, and transform origin will be 100% 0. You can play around with these values. They determine kind of how the text will be animated, like if it reveals it from the top to bottom or right to left, left to right, etc. So we'll save this, and now what's going to happen, we're not going to, actually we are going to see it. Let's see here. Oh yes, in order for us to see it, we have to make the background white. There we go. So now we're going to see that part, the white overlay, but we're not going to see the text because we haven't revealed it yet. So unfortunately, in order to animate the after or before selectors on the element, we can't just put something like span, after. That won't work. So instead, what we have to do is we have to use a CSS plugin, or a plugin here specifically, and it's called, if I go back here, the CSS Rule plugin. So if I'm going to copy that, we're going to copy that URL, put in script source, reference that CSS Rule plugin, and now what we have to do is create a reference to that selector with that new plugin. So we're going to say var rule equals CSS Rule, oops, don't put that in parentheses, CSS Rule plugin, and then we're going to say get rule, and then span after. So then what we'll put in is GSAP, we'll say 2 this time. We're going to reference our rule for the selector, and then we wrap everything in the object like usual, but we put in CSS Rule as an object, and then we put in what we want to animate. So scale Y 0. So that's going to take it on the Y axis, vertical axis, and we're going to scale it 0 based on the transform origin. So then after that, we can put in all the usual stuff, duration 1, and that's about it right there. So now let's give this a shot. And notice how it comes in and animates. Awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. Now what about if we wanted to, oh, we already did add the delay. Never mind that. So now, okay, this all works and it looks exactly how we want it to. What if though, for instance, we wanted to make the duration of this element maybe a little bit longer? What would that mean? That would mean basically in the current setup that we have, we would have to adjust the other delays to account for that because it's going to throw everything off. When you're using what's called the GSAP timeline, however, you don't have to worry about that. It's much easier to make adjustments to your specific animations in the sequence without having to worry about screwing up everything else. So I'm going to show you how to do this the timeline way. So we're going to, wrong way, Gary, comment this stuff out. All right. And we're going to do it the timeline way. All right. So for the timeline way, we have to create an instance of the timeline. So we're going to say var TL for timeline equals gsap.timeline. And in here, any default properties that all of the animations that you're going to create from this instance of the timeline would share. So if any of them say share the same property, like maybe the same duration, you can specify it here in a defaults property right here, like duration 1. If they all have opacity 0, you can put opacity 0 in the next comma. All right. So now what we can do is we could say tl.from, and we can start recreating the animations up here. But it's not as straightforward as just taking it in this order. When you have when you're creating animations without the timeline, the order of these values don't really matter because you're dealing with them in terms of durations and delays to try to create the animation. For here, when you're using that timeline, the order of the animations is very important because once one animation is done, like your first animation, the next one will start automatically, which is not the case up here. So you'll kind of see what I mean as we go on. So from is going to be our anim1, just like it is at the top. It's kind of like the first thing that happens. We reveal that headline. So we're going to put anim1, and then inside of here, it's going to be the same stuff, like -50 for Y. We're going to stagger it at a 0.6 seconds value. We're going to put opacity 0. All right, so let's save it. We'll go back, and there we go. It's not showing this stuff because we didn't reveal that animation yet in the timeline way. Next up, we're going to say to, and we're going to put our rule here. This is going to be the part where we actually reveal the blinder effect on the text animation, 1.8, and then our CSS Rule object here will be scale Y like it was, 0. And then let me hit play or save just so we can play it just to show you what happens. Notice how long it took, and that's because it's waiting for this animation to complete before it starts. But if you do want to offset this so that it kind of starts around the same time or maybe just after, you could put in another parameter or not a parameter, but a comma here, and you could put in quotes. If you want it to start earlier, you put negative equals or minus equals, and we'll say like 2.2 seconds. There we go. Now it comes in much better. All right, so now let's go ahead and continue on. And by the way, we can chain these as long as you don't put a semicolon at the end here. So you don't have to keep on saying TL or TL dot. And then we're going to say from aside background position. Let me just copy this part at least and this. All right. And the opacity is 0. And we're going to also have a delay here, a negative delay offset. I shouldn't say delay, it's an offset. Negative offset of 1.5. There we go. And then finally the swirl graphic. Let's just copy that, or duplicate it rather. This will be image. We'll say Y is 30, and actually 50, because that's what we were using before. The opacity is 0, and I think we'll just do a ½ a second delay for this, or offset rather. And there we go. How awesome is that? Now we can adjust any of these values without having to worry about adjusting any of the other properties of the other sequences. So that's one benefit of using the timeline, is the fact that we don't have to, change one value and then have to change everything else. Another awesome advantage is the fact that it's a timeline, so it's literally like a timeline that you can scrub through the animation. For instance, what if we wanted to reverse this animation? Doing it this way, we'd have to like recreate these and just by manually, and then have 4 more lines where it reverses itself. That would be ridiculous, very verbose. Instead, we can do this. So let's make this clickable. This right here. So this is the call to action button called Start Dreaming, has an ID of CTA. So that's how we're going to reference it in JavaScript. And we'll say document, hands in the wrong position, document.getElement by ID, CTA, add an event listener for a click. And then once something's clicked, this is all, whatever is in here will execute. So what we'll do is we'll use a JavaScript ternary operator, which is just basically like a toggle. So we'll say tl.reversed, and look up the timeline, the API, just to see what methods you do have available. We have reversed. So if this will result in true or false if it was reversed. So if it was reversed, then we want to call TL play. If not, which is what the colon is for, then we're going to reverse it. All right, so let's save that, and it should work. So it's going to come in, we're going to click it, and now it's going to automatically reverse through that timeline through these steps. How awesome is that? So now, I know you can't see it right now, but we can click it if it's somewhere. Where the hell is it? There it is. Now, of course, you wouldn't want to, make this sort of thing live or whatever, or use it live, but this is just to show you that it does work. Look how awesome that is. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that a lot. If you have any questions, be sure to comment. If you like this, comment, tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. I don't care. But most importantly, make sure to subscribe, because at 500,000 subscribers, I'm releasing a guitar playthrough video set in the early 1980s. It's going to be a music video. I'm just about done with it. Very fun stuff. So yeah, get on that. I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.